Okay, so we are moving on. Verse 6, it says, "Nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor of the destruction and sudden death that surprise and lay waste at noonday." Now, I'm going to put, of course, we're in Psalm 91, continuing on today. I'm going to put these two verses, read them kind of side by side. I'm going to draw some parallels because that was one thing that was noted in my Hebrew lexicon. It was talking about this particular verse, and it was in parallel. So listen to this. So we talk about, "You shall not be afraid of the terror of the night." That's in verse 5. But verse 6 says, "Nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness." Verse 5 says, "Nor the arrow that flies by day." And verse 6 says, "Nor the sudden death, the destruction and sudden death that surprise and lay waste at noonday." So both in verse 5 and verse 6, we have things at night and we have things in the daytime. And so I do think that it's important, and they're structured the same way. So there are elements there that we should connect, and I want to do that. So, of course, in verse 5, we're talking about being afraid of the terror of the night, the danger of the night. And then in verse 6, it's the pestilence that stalks in darkness. Now, if someone is stalking, that's not really really a great thing. There's something amiss about that. It's not normal to stalk. One definition, this was from the Hebrew lexicon, was prowl. Okay, so where it says walks here, and I think this is where the Amplified gets the verb stalks, but it is also to prowl. And where have we heard that before? Or when you hear the word prowl, what does that make you think of? Well, for me, it makes me think, of course, of a lion. And we have talked a lot about the lion, right? So this pestilence that prowls. Remember in 1 Peter 5:8 that enemy of yours, the devil, roams about like a lion in fierce hunger, seeking someone to seize upon and devour. So this pestilence that stalks and prowls is a terror, and again, for destruction. Now, we talked about pestilence earlier in this chapter in verse 3, and it was the deadly pestilence. And this was plague, destruction, and we saw really where it was talking about sin, the enemy, transgression, just utter destruction at the fall. And of course, we've been redeemed and delivered, which is so good. But the Amplified does a beautiful job. I want to look at Luke 21, let's see, verse 11. This is Jesus talking to his disciples, and he's talking about signs of the ends of the age and that kind of thing. But let me find my note here. Webster's New International Dictionary offers this phrase as a definition of plague and pestilence. This is huge. Huge, huge, huge. Now, we think about a pestilence that stalks in darkness, and I want you to hear this definition. Plagues, pestilences, malignant and contagious or infectious epidemic diseases which are deadly and devastating. That's the definition of plagues and pestilences from Webster's New International Dictionary. It offers this phrase, this definition: malignant and contagious or infectious epidemic diseases which are deadly and devastating. Now, malignant, what does that immediately make you think of? Cancer, a tumor. Now, I think that it is so just like our God that how long ago this psalm was written, that these words were penned, and that disease truly is one that typically stalks prowls in darkness. Thick darkness, actually, is how this is described. At night, you don't see it coming. A terror. But he says you won't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Because there is nothing that God cannot deliver you from. Nothing that he doesn't want. He wants to deliver us from everything. And there is no plague, disease, epidemic, malignancy, destructive force. What else does it say? Contagious or infectious epidemic disease, deadly and devastating. There is nothing of that nature that the broken body of Jesus was not enough to redeem you from. And most of the time, it's because we do not know the promise of God, that we do not really, we don't understand, or we don't know that he wants us whole from that. We believe it's only for certain people. We don't believe it's for me. I'm not good enough. I've not done enough. Honey, because you are enough. And so, worthy enough, it's the blood of Jesus that makes us worthy, not us on our own. And so, covered in his blood, remember from the mercy seat that we talked about on Friday, standing righteous before him, Jesus' broken body has paid the penalty for healing. And malignant, contagious, infectious, epidemic diseases, which are deadly and devastating, has been covered, and we have been promised protection from it. And I know we're over the 6-minute mark, but I'm going to tie this up, and so we'll start fresh tomorrow. But definition of malignant, which you probably are quite familiar with, but it's tending to produce death or deterioration, especially tending to infiltrate, metastasize, and terminate fatally. Evil in nature, influence, or effect, that it's injurious, and malicious. Those things, this pestilence that stalks in darkness, we are not to be afraid of. And we're going to get into why in the next few weeks. But he has covered us. Under his wings we trust and find refuge. And his faithfulness is our defense. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.